Okay, hello everyone. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? Thank you for joining. I see there is at least one person watching. So thank you to whoever you are. And let's get the show on the road here. So before we start, let's go over what we have so far. I think it's looking really good. This is one of the more successful pieces that we've had here, and I tend to not finish things, so I think I'm going to actually finish this one before moving on to something else. So, some cat hair on there. Anyway, let's continue with this and jump right into it. So thank you for joining me. It is 11 a.m. on the West Coast as of Sunday, January 31st. Alright, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I wanted to start today with an overview of all of the executive actions that Joe Biden has done since he started. Joe Biden has been the president for, 11 days at this point, right? So I wanted to kind of go over some of the stuff that he's accomplished in 11 days, because 11 days is not a lot of time. And, I think a lot of people would agree that, you can't really judge somebody and their performance with only that much time, right? But it does kind of look like, President Biden is sort of jumping right out of the gate and roaring full steam ahead. One of the measures of a successful presidency or not is what do they accomplish in the first 100 days, right? You always hear about that when it comes to a new president. What is this 100-day agenda going to be? And it's sort of a measure of, how effective they'll be, going forward, and then also how much momentum they can get and support they can get for their agenda. So let's take a look at all of the executive actions, because on the very first day he released 10 executive orders, right? A ton of them, immediately right off the bat. And which, some people were talking about that, I heard some commentary on the news and on YouTube and stuff where that's not really such a good idea to put so many out immediately, because it doesn't allow you to it doesn't allow you to craft the message, right? The idea being that, well, you would release one at a time over the course of several days or even weeks, and that way it gets people talking about it. And so why did he release 10 of them all at once? Who knows? Maybe he didn't want to waste any time. Maybe these are things that he believes are extremely important, and who cares about the message? Personally, what I think it is, I think Biden knows that he's going to be a one-termer. That's what I think. I think he knows that he's got one shot, and I don't really even know if he's going to be interested in running again. I mean, he probably will be. He probably will be interested in getting another term, But who knows? I mean, he might be too old at that point. He might, might not be interested. I mean, what is he, 78 or some shit at this point? I mean, he's pretty old, right? So, or 70, 76, something like that. He's pretty old. So 4 years from now, he might just want to go retire. So it's sort of well, now I got my shot, I might as well take it. So, day one, let's take a look. Now, a lot of these are actually reversing stuff that the Trump people did, but let's take a look. So, day one, memorandum freezing approval of rules passed in final days of Trump presidency. And I'm reading this list from here, so let me put that in the chat if you guys want to see the list that I'm reading these from. And we won't spend too much time on this. We'll spend maybe about maybe 15 minutes going through these. I don't want to take an hour going through all of these executive orders, but Let's see. Blah 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 blah. Let's see. All new impending rules passed in the last days of Trump's tenure will be reviewed by department and agency heads. Basically, what is that for? Well, before, and this wasn't just Trump, but, you know, a couple of different presidents have done this. Like, right before they leave, they pass a bunch of rules and shit like that. You know, and I'm not exactly sure what Trump did, but he did pass a couple of things to make, like, I think he did some things that took away some like rights from gay people, things like that, in his last days. Like he made it easier to discriminate against gay people in hiring or something like that. I'd have to look it up. So basically, this first one just says anything that Donald Trump did in his last couple of weeks, we're going to review before it gets implemented. Right. First off, very first, so it sends a strong message right here, saying that we're cleaning house, you know. Number two, rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement on climate change. So that I think is a pretty big one, because you know the environment is not getting better, right? If anything is shown in 2020, let's not forget that you know we started the year in 2020 with massive wildfires in Australia. And then, you know, the whole entire west coast of the United States. It wasn't just California this time. It was, you know, Washington and you know, Oregon and all of those states, massive wildfires everywhere. You know, so it's like, good, yeah, we need this. We should have been, you know, in this since the beginning. We should have never fucking left. Right? So there you go, man. Rejoining the climate agreement, day one. Executive order to promote racial equality. Biden ordered his government to conduct equity assessments of its agencies and reallocate resources to advance equity for all. It doesn't say equality, it says equity. Including people of color and others who have been historically unserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Yeah, okay, you know, I think what that was that, Donald Trump got rid of diversity training, right? So, I think this is reversing that, which is, that in and of itself is just such a dick move, if you think about, like, you know, no more diversity training, like, anyway, so yeah, I guess that's, you know, that's a good thing. Proclamation ending ban on U.S. entry from majority Muslim countries. Oh yeah, Trump's Muslim ban. So that got reversed. People kind of forget about this stuff, right? I mean, when you have an entire year of like a really, you know, ridiculous election and pandemic that kills 400,000 people, when you're living through daily crises and shit like that, you forget, like, yeah, oh yeah, we also banned people from coming in from these Muslim countries for no reason except for their, you know, religion, which is like unconstitutional. And this entire time that's been in effect. Right. Of course, I don't know why would anybody would want to come to the United States now, especially during the pandemic. I mean, when we have 4,000 people a day, like, you know, people are dropping dead like flies here. Like, there's this stuff in the news now, kind of going off on a tangent here, about, you know, caravan and stuff. It's funny how, like, the caravans only show up, right? It's like, oh, there's a news about a caravan of migrants. You know, funny how they only show up when it's like politically expedient for like the you know, Republicans here. It's like, oh, the Republicans are like getting major pushback because they tried to fucking take over the country. Hey, look at this caravan over here. You know, it's almost like it's a distraction. But anyway, like, apparently there's a huge caravan of migrants coming to the country. It's like, I don't know why you would want to come here, because there are no jobs. Can't get a fucking job, right? Everything's locked down. I mean, even in like a restaurant or some shit, you know what I mean? Like the kinds of low-paying service jobs that, you know, immigrants like, you know, from south of the border usually take. Can't even get those jobs anymore. And then secondly, it's like, you know, fucking pandemic, dude. It's like, why are you coming to the United States? You're putting yourself at risk. Right? I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, I'm totally open for anybody to come here to try to improve their lives. I'm just saying that you're not going to improve your life if you come here. You know what I'm saying? Like that ship has sailed. You know, at the very least, you're going to have to wait until after COVID-19 is over with. You know, then maybe shit might get better, and then you might be able to actually find a job and get some opportunity here. But as it is right now, good luck. I don't know why they're coming here. They're, you know, if they want to come here and take the risk, be my guest. But how many died yesterday? Just this last week, you know, like because of the pandemic. I mean, you know, hundreds of thousands. Anyway, moving on here. Let's see. Executive order requiring mask wearing on federal property. That's a fucking no-brainer, isn't it? You know, and some of these are very just logically, like, you know, like, no shit Sherlock kind of things. Like, that should have been in effect already, you know? Seriously, like, why the hell was there not a mandate saying you have to wear masks inside of federal buildings? I mean, you have to wear them if you go to the grocery store, right? If you go to, like, any, like, retail out, you know, retail store anywhere in the entire fucking country, you gotta wear a mask. So it's like, how come I have to wear one if I go to Starbucks, but if I go to a freaking, you know, federal courthouse, I don't? That doesn't make any fucking sense. So it's like, good. Yeah, that should have been in effect already for, like, months, you know. Another one, executive order coordinating a government-wide COVID-19 response. That's also another common sense thing that should have been happening, which wasn't. We got to remember that the Trump people had no coordinated COVID-19 response at all. They left it all up to the states, right? They have left it, you know, the Trump people left it up to the states since the very beginning. Since the entire, you know, since the thing started, there has been no federal guidance, you know, no plan, no testing plan, no plan to get, you know, protective equipment, you know, PPE out to anybody. As a matter of fact, what was happening was that, you know, the federal government was outbidding states for shipments of PPE, right? And then they would take that and put it into the federal stockpile, and then they would, like, resell that back to the states. Like, it was like, what? Like, you know, and I think I think we're going to find eventually that there was a lot of, like, grifting and, like, fucking war profiteering, you know, I guess you would call it pandemic profiteering, happening off of that. There were stories of, you know, I don't know if you guys remember this, there were stories of the Department of Homeland Security would swoop in, like say a state, you know, like say Nevada or something, would get a shipment of masks, COVID-19 masks, or respirators or something, right? And then the the Homeland Security would swoop in and confiscate it. Right, and then it would go into the federal stockpile, and then they would sell it back to the states. Like, that's the kind of shit that was happening. And so there were stories, like, when it first started, and there was this mad scramble of everybody to get, you know, equipment, right? There were stories about how, like, state governors had to do, like, this undercover spy shit in order to, like, get shipments of, you know, needed supplies and sneak them past the fucking Fed. Like, this is not bullshit. Hey, Lewis the Hedgehog, what's happening, man? Well, hey, thank you for joining. I mean, if you can't stay, thank you so much for joining anyway. I really appreciate it. If you have anything you want me to talk about in the stream, just go ahead and put it in the chat, and I will talk about it later. You know, but if you can't, like, stay and watch, at least you could, like, review it later and see what, you know. Anyway, but thanks for joining, dude. Yeah, that kind of thing was happening. You know, it was like shit was getting confiscated, and then, like, I don't know if you remember, like, they said, oh, the federal stockpile is not for the states to use; it's for us. Like, that was a thing. So there was all kinds of ridiculous shenanigans and backhanded fuckery going on with the federal government's non-existent fucking, you know, COVID plan. So it's good. It's like, finally, you know. And then that was the thing that we found out last week after, you know, the Biden people took over, and they said, hey, what's your vaccination plan, right? Because for, you know, months and months, the Trump people have been saying, oh, we're going to get vaccines and we're going to vaccinate, you know, 20 million people by the end of the year, and we've got this plan, blah, blah, blah. Turns out they don't have a plan. Turns out there was no plan. GameStop, I will get to that. I want to get through these executive orders, and then I want to talk about GameStop. So, yes, I will talk about that. And I will explain it much better this time. But anyway, so yeah, we're about halfway through. Let me just continue with these, and then we'll jump to that. I don't want to spend too much time on the executive orders here. Okay, executive order revising immigration enforcement policies. So basically, what is this about? He told ICE to stop, like, just grabbing people willy-nilly and fucking, you know, deporting them. Because, like, weird shit was happening. Like, basically, ICE was doing stuff like deporting people who had businesses, deporting young students who should have been protected under DACA. You know, there were stories about how people would graduate from, like, high school, and then, like, you know, there'd be ICE officers waiting for them at the fucking graduation ceremony where they'd get arrested and deported. All that kinds of shit, you know, like, you know, basically ICE just turning into a fucking rogue agency, right? And this puts an end to that. And the shitty thing is that this one actually got blocked. And it seemed like in the meantime, ICE was just fucking ignoring it. You know, so even when they were telling people to, like, stop it with that kind of, you know, this kind of rampage sort of thing. Because here's the thing, right? During the Obama years, right, they focused on criminals. So they would deport people, yes, and there was a record number of deportations under Obama. I don't want to excuse that, right? But they would focus on people who had warrants. They would focus on things like drug dealers, that kind of thing, you know, human traffickers, blah, blah, blah. People who were criminals got bumped to the top of the list. Your, you know, your grandpa who's been in the country for 60 years and whatever, and has a business and a life here and owns a house, all that shit, and a family. He was at the bottom of the list. And yeah, okay, they would still have to be hearings and all this other shit, right? But, you know, they would focus more like on gang members, that kind of thing. And this is what they're going to go back to that. They're going to go back to deporting criminals first. Okay. And then everybody else will get, you know, they'll have, you know, try to open a path to citizenship for people who've been here for years and years and years. That's what that's all about. And what really sucks is that one got blocked by a judge who just happened to be a Trump appointee. So that one has not been, you know, that has to go through the courts, right? Because, you know, that the judge can just put a hold on it, right? As far as I know, a judge can't, unless it's like totally unconstitutional, right? In which case it wouldn't get enacted anyway, right? But judges can put like, you know, they could put stays on it. So there's been a 100-day stay on that. So in the meantime, ICE is just still fucking deporting, you know, children. They're deporting children. They're deporting business owners. They're deporting people who otherwise don't have any sort of warrants or criminal records or anything like that. So that's kind of fucked up. And that just kind of goes to show you, you know, goes to show that even the president has limits, you know. And actually, it's good. It's good that the president has limits. It's supposed to be like that in the first place. Hang on a second. I need to put another piece of paper under this because it's like, you know, the table that I have here is like, the table is leather, so it's all soft and squishy, so it doesn't actually like have that hard of a surface underneath. Okay, there we go. Anyhow, let's see. There was like a lot of them here, man. All right. Executive order undoing regulatory restrictions on federal agencies. So what's the story with that? Well, the Trump people, the Trump administration, right, really did a wallop on regulations of just all kinds across all agencies. It's not just banking, not just business, you know, taxes or OSHA or anything like that, but just pretty much across the board. They've done a pretty, you know, big time regulatory cut on everything from meat packing to fucking the forestry service, just all kinds of shit, just making everything, you know, as reducing the size of government, I guess they would say it, but in real life, you know, making it so that like companies can pollute and right, pollute and exploit people. That's what happens when you you know, that's what regulations are there for. Like everybody wonders like Why is this regulation exist? Why does that regulation exist? You know, there are reasons usually. And yeah, sometimes you can find some that are redundant, you can find some that are too restrictive, whatever. But generally regulations are there for a reason. And the reason being that usually someone is getting exploited, or a company is, you know, spewing toxic shit into the atmosphere, or somebody is being harmed in some way, you know. So that's basically what this is all about. And one of the things famously that the Trump people said is that for every regulation which is enacted, because a lot of regulations don't even require laws. It'll just be an existing law, and then the agency will determine how to interpret that and how to enact it, right? And, you know, so one thing that the Trump people said is that for every new regulation which is put into effect, 2 more have to be removed. Right? That's what they said. And so let's say, you know, and that could really cripple some shit. So let's say that there's a, you know, a toxic chemical that a certain industry starts using. Let's say fracking, for example. Let's say they add a new chemical to the fracking mixture that is like causing severe environmental damage, and you really need to put a regulation to stop that. Well, what other 2 are you going to remove? You know, and it's ridiculous. And it's like, well, what if you can't fucking remove any other 2? So what ended up happening over the last 4 years is that that severely slowed the impact of new regulations, some of which are badly needed. Right? So this is going to get rid of that shit, because that's a ridiculous, dumbass, stupid fucking way to go about it. And I'm glad that that got removed. And it's like, you know, anyway. All right, one more. Executive order incorporating undocumented immigrants into the census. How many of these are there? Jesus, there's a lot. Okay, we're getting pretty close here. I'm only going to go over day 1 because there's like an entire page here, and then maybe in future streams we'll go over the rest. So what is that? Well, the Trump people decided to stop counting undocumented immigrants, right, in the census. The argument being, well, they're not citizens, so they shouldn't be counted, but the Constitution doesn't say citizens, it says persons, right? And what does this affect? Well, it affects how much money various states get for various things, you know. So basically, the result of that was that states like, you know, with a large number of population of undocumented immigrants, like California, Nevada, essentially blue states, you know, got less money from the federal government, right? And what this meant was that, you know, and here's the shitty thing about that, right? It's already the law that undocumented people can't take advantage of federal programs. That's already a law. So, you know, when you hear Republicans saying shit like, oh, you know, the illegal aliens are stealing all of the welfare money, that's bullshit. That's total complete horseshit of the highest caliber, because these people are already not eligible for that. You know, you have to be a citizen, you have to have a social security number, right? You have to have, like, you know, you have to be a citizen in order to take advantage of unemployment, you know, to take advantage of Medicare, for example, of food stamps, you know, SNAP program, any of that stuff. You know, if you're not a citizen, you're not getting any of that. So it's kind of a, you know, that's a lie that they've been, you know, for years and years and years said, you know, this idea that they come here because they want to, you know, take advantage of our welfare state is complete and total bullshit of the highest order, right? You know, and what it is why, well, California will allow people to get driver's licenses without, you know, proving their national citizenship, stuff like that. And they see that as some kind of encroachment on, like, oh, well, eventually they're just going to, you know, they'll start getting unemployment, they'll start getting Medicare, Medicaid, they'll start getting welfare, you know, they'll start getting Social Security. And it's like, no, that's horseshit. So really all this executive order was to punish blue states that didn't vote for Donald Trump. Find some reason to not send blue states more money. You know, even though the blue states pay more into the Fed, you know, into the Treasury than red states do on average. There's a few that hold their own weight, but most of the red states actually take more money. You know, most of the blue states actually pay more money, right, in taxes than they take out in services, right? And that's all this really was just find some reason to punish the blue states. So good. Glad they got rid of that shit. Here's a big one. Executive order banning discrimination on basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Yeah, so basically, there was a Supreme Court decision in Georgia, Bostock versus Clayton last year. And this is basically extending federal non-discrimination protections to all LGBTQ people. You know, in particular, the trans people, right, were particularly hit pretty hard under the Trump administration. And that was one thing that they took that out. They tried to make it so that the Civil Rights Act didn't apply towards, you know, gay people or trans people, stuff like that. So this reverses that. So good. Another one, ending the Keystone XL pipeline, right, by denying them permits. Good, finally. That has been a fight for years. I don't know if you remember back in 2016, that was one of the big, you know, that was one of the big stories, one of the big motivators for people to go out and vote. Trump wins and he just fucking allows it to go through. And now Biden is just, he says that this should be permanent. This should permanently stop that, right? The thing is, it's not permanent, right? And the next president that comes in, if he's a Republican, can just start it right back up again. So that's kind of the problem when you have, you know, a deadlocked Congress and you have to do all this shit through executive order, is that the next president can just undo your executive orders. But at least this means for the next 4 years at least, the Keystone Pipeline won't get built, and we won't be importing really incredibly dirty Canadian tar sands and refining that into incredibly dirty crude oil, you know, in the time when we should be moving away from fucking fossil fuels for the good of, you know, not just our country, but for like the survival of mankind. We should be moving away from fossil fuels. So it's like, hopefully in another 4 years, it'll just be gone and it'll cost too much to actually create for the benefit. You know, maybe by that point we'll be a little greener, and this might be a bullet we can dodge. But it just kind of goes to show, it's like, man, for 4 years already, people were, you know, fighting. Like they had to basically give up that fight, and it just, you know, just one man can just make that decision and like save the lands and livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of people, because that's what that was, you know, happening. They're building this pipeline underneath like water sources for like indigenous, like, you know, Native Americans and shit like that. Like they were building it underneath their water sources, so if like the pipeline breaks, like there it goes, all their fucking water's gone. Like, and this is like thousands of people we're talking about here. So I mean, it's not, you know, yeah, we have that greater goal of reducing carbon emissions and stopping global warming, but this also affected like real people right now, you know. So let's not forget about that either. I mean, shit. Okay, let's see. A couple of boring ones. Memorandum revamping regulatory review. Executive order mandating ethics pledge for government appointees. There's a couple of things like this. Executive order pausing federal student loan payments. That's going to be like, I think they're pausing it until like November of 2021. That's going to help some people, you know. Especially like there's no reason, like especially during a pandemic like this where people are having trouble finding work, you know, there's no reason why we can't pause things like you know, federal student loans, right? What they should be doing is trying to find out some way to like forgive those loans, right? Or reduce them, if not forgive them, you know. I mean, forgiving them would be the best way to go about it, but sometimes, you know, even if you could reduce them by, you know, a certain amount, you know, 30, 40%, some shit like that, I'm sure that would really help some people as well. Right. Here's the thing about this. See, this is the thing about this stuff. We can compromise on the implementation of these things sometimes. It's like, okay, taking student loan, because there's a student loan crisis right now, like something like more than $1 trillion owned by people, owed by people who went to college and now can't get jobs to pay off their student loans because of the fucking economy. And this was happening even before the pandemic started. There was this, student loan crisis, right? And, we can compromise on the solutions. But the point is that nobody was doing anything about it in the first place. Donald Trump was not doing shit about that at all. And his Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, was actually pursuing people, doing everything she could to fucking reverse any progress made on this front in the first place, right? So, that's kind of what these are showing. This is showing that in one day he was able to. This is what the president can do. This is the kind of power he has. So the fact that none of this shit was getting done is there's no excuse for it. Pulling funds from the border wall, good. Because that's a waste of fucking money. It's a waste of money. It's not going to stop anybody from coming, and it hasn't. If you look over, the last 4 years, right? People coming over the border illegally from south of the border has not significantly decreased at all, And they've only fucking built something like an additional 30 miles of fucking border fence, right? Most of all the money that they fucking took, which, by the way, was stolen from the Pentagon. Let's not forget about that for the fucking dumbass wall. Trump unconstitutionally, declared a national emergency and stole that money from the Pentagon, right? So let's not forget that shit. For all that money that he took, they only built 30 miles of wall. And the whole rest of it was barriers that were already there that they replaced whatever barrier was there with this piece of shit steel slatted fence thing that falls over when the fucking wind blows. Right? The whole thing was just basically a fucking vanity project from beginning to end that everybody knows this shit's not going to work because all you got to do is just, get a ladder and climb over the fucking thing. Right? So it was a joke. The wall is a joke from beginning to end to begin with, and I'm glad that he fucking paused the fucking, goddamn, should defund it fucking completely. Right? Should defund it completely, man. Anyway. What's else? 2 more. Memorandum reinstating deferred enforced departure for Liberians. Liberian refugees. Blocking the deportation of Liberian refugees. I'm not really sure what the story is on that. But basically, I think what it was that during, it says here, let's see, reinstating the deferment of their enforced departure granted by the Bush and Obama administration. So apparently, I'm not really sure what the story is on that, but it sounds like these were sort of people who were protected from being deported, and then Trump took that away. All right. Liberia is a nation in Africa, which was founded by American slaves that returned from the United States back to, Africa. They founded the nation of Liberia, right? So I guess that's sort of like a reparations kind of thing. That sounds good to me. And memorandum strengthening deferred action for childhood arrivals. So DACA, he's strengthening that. So that's great, because that was one thing that the Trump people really fucking were trying to dismantle was DACA. We talked earlier, like I said, they would deport people who were fucking graduating and shit from high school, on their graduation day, which is just unacceptable, Absolutely fucking unacceptable. So I'm glad that, Now, why did I want to talk about these? Well, because it shows what the president can do, right? Because, the president is not a king. So he can't just declare something and then make it happen, right? Executive orders are only really supposed to be implementing existing law. That's what the executive branch is supposed to be. It's, you know, the legislative branch creates the law. They set aside the funding for it. They create the letter of the law, whatever. The executive branch executes the law, and the, you know, the judicial branch rules on the law, whether or not it's constitutional or whatever, or how it should be interpreted, right? And that's how it's supposed to work. And this just kind of shows, like, well, this is the sort of power that he has on which laws he wants to, you know, and how they want them to be executed, right? And this shows you, especially when it comes to the ones that have to do with the pandemic, that have to do with mask mandates, things like that. They should have been doing this stuff since the fucking beginning. You know, this is how it should have happened. And so when you hear people talking about, you know, during the Trump years, there was nothing we could have done in order to stop the kind of like, because this is what you get. Like, there's already people out there who are like apologists for Donald Trump when you talk about his incredibly bad handling of the pandemic, right? And, you know, it is what it is. I mean, that's what Donald Trump himself said, right? It is what it is, right? Fuck you. No, it's not. No, that's unacceptable. It is what it is. It's bullshit. Do something about it. You're the fucking president. Do something about it. And this shows that, yes, this entire time, this is what he could have been doing. We could have had a federal mask mandate from the very beginning. We could have had a vaccination plan from the beginning, right? We could have had, you know, economic relief for people, you know, student loan, you know, people who have student loans that they can't pay off during a pandemic when they can't work, right? You know, we can do things to help them. We can pause things, right? Right? We can, and this is what they should have done since the fucking beginning, the minute it started. I mean, fuck, what they should, you know, he's going to have to do another one, I think, for, you know, evictions. The eviction crisis is going to have to be something else they're going to have to address. And he's probably going to have to do it through executive order, because our Congress, you know, our fucking Congress is, like, paralyzed, you know, because of infighting and bickering. And you know, they're at a fucking stalemate. Nothing's going to get through Congress, even though, you know, the Democrats technically have a majority now. It's still not going to work. They still have the filibuster to contend with, right? So this is what we've got here, and now we've got to see what we can do with, you know, executive orders. And it's really good to see. I wanted to talk about that a little bit because it shows that, you know, and there's like an entire list of some other ones that have happened since then, right? But I'll be spending the entire stream talking about them if we go through those. But I wanted to kind of, you know, talk about a little bit about, like, these are just the ones he did on the first day. And it shows what happens when you have an actual president who's engaged, right? I mean, it's kind of nice, isn't it, to, like it's been a week and there hasn't been a scandal yet, you know? And, like, Joe Biden hasn't played golf yet. Right? And he hasn't insulted any celebrities on Twitter yet. He hasn't made fun of anybody on Twitter or said anything sexist or, like, fucking made fun of Rosie O'Donnell or, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's nice to actually get, like, hey, here's a president who actually fucking works, you know, who doesn't spend, like, you know, 7 hours a day in fucking executive time watching TV and drinking fucking Diet Cokes or whatever, you know. It's nice to actually get someone in charge who not only knows what they're doing, but who is not fucking lazy and actually cares about the country, you know. Cares about the country, cares about people, understands the situation we're in. You know, the situation we're in a large part due to the incompetence of the prior administration. You know, why is that? Why is it that it seems like Democrats always have to clean up the messes of Republicans? So you get, for example, you know, Bush the first, you know, the economy crashes, right? Bill Clinton has to kind of take over and then, you know, gets the economy back going and everything's great. You know, we had the first .com boom and all that stuff. And then he leaves office with a fucking surplus. George Bush Jr. comes in, cuts, you know, massive fucking tax cuts, starts 2 fucking wars at the same time, doesn't finish any of them, either of them, right? Fucking collapses the economy because they, you know, because of regulations that the Republicans took away in the banking sector, right? Leaves this huge fucking mess. You know, Obama has to come in, takes 8 years cleaning all that up, right? By the time he leaves, things are looking pretty good. You know, things were not half bad in 2016 as far as the economy went. You know, we still had some like military engagements and shit like that, but you know, wars were winding down. ISIS was on its way out, all that other shit, right? Things actually, compared to now, things were actually not half bad in 2016, were they not? You know, Donald Trump comes in, right? And you just saw what happened over the last fucking 4 years. You know, constant daily scandals, the shit hitting the fan. And then, you know, massive fucking, like, hurricane that destroys Puerto Rico and, you know, all of this shit. And then when the shit really hits the fan, when we really could use some leadership, you know, pandemic, right? Guy doesn't even do the basic fucking things it takes to stop a pandemic. 400,000 people die, and now Joe Biden's got to clean up Trump's mess, and that just seems to be the pattern, isn't it? You know, Republican gets into office, fucks everything up. Democrat comes in, has to fix everything up. People then go, "Hey, things are looking pretty good," and they elect another Republican ad nauseum. You know, forever. That's what's going to happen. That just seems to be the pattern that the United States goes through. So. Anyway, but hey, Lewis, you talked about, you wanted to talk a little bit about the, you know, GameStop, right? So I did make a video on it, and I think I got it a little backwards in my last video, so kind of wanted to, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about GameStop, you know, and what's going on with it. So basically what it is that GameStop is the victim of short selling, right? And what is short selling? So that's when, you know, you get a hedge fund or something like that, and they think that a company is going to lose money on their stock is going to go down, and so short selling is a way to profit when a company loses money, when a company is starting to, you know, when a company's stock decreases, right? And here's how it works. So we can actually do a quick illustration to kind of show you how short selling works. Okay. So you have company A, right? Right here. This is company A. And then there's, you know, so they want to short sell GameStop. So let's do GameStop, you know, GameStop here, right? GameStop puts out 100 shares, right? So company A wants to do a short sell, you know, on that. So what they do is they borrow these, right? And then when the price goes down, they sell them. Okay. Then, so like, well, basically, yeah, it goes like this. No, sorry, that's incorrect. So what happens is they borrow the stock. They borrow the stock and then they sell it, right? And then the price goes down, they buy it back at that lower price. And then they have to give it back to the people they borrowed it from. So they borrow the stock, right? They say, let's say these 100 shares are at $50 each. They borrow it at you know, at $50, right? And then it goes down to $25, and then they sell it, right? And then they have to give it back. So they get to keep that extra $25. So that's a short sell, right? So the other thing is, right, so then you can get company B, and let's say they want to do a short sell too. So what you can also do is they can borrow this money, borrow this stock, right, loan it out to company B. Company B does a short sell, right? Then they have to give it back to company A, who does their own short sell, blah, 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 blah. So you see how it works. That's how a stock can have more than 100% of, you know, it could be, could have short sell positions that equal more than 100% of the stock that's issued by a company. Okay. And it seems like that should be illegal, doesn't it? Timothy Dannenhofer, thanks for joining, man. I will get to your comment in a minute. But yeah, like it seems like that should be illegal, right? It seems like you shouldn't be able to borrow and then sell it and then, you know what I mean? Like, because all that really does is it pulls wealth out of the economy. It's like it's profiting from the from a company that's starting to go out of business, right? And also what that does is that it also can accelerate the decline of a company. So if there's a company that has a lot of short sell positions against it, right? That's a signal to other investors to go, hey, this company's not doing too well, you know. So people will be reluctant then to invest in that company because they go, well, these hedge fund guys and these other brokers or whatever, you know, these investment bankers, they must know something I don't. They must think that GameStop is going out, you know, going away. And that's why they're betting on it going out of business, right? So that can actually accelerate a company going out of business because no one wants to invest in it, right? That's how the stock market is, you know, for better or worse, like, yeah, that's how companies, well, it's one method, I guess, not the only way, but it's a method by which companies can raise capital. So you're GameStop, let's say you go, okay, I'm GameStop, brick and mortar stores are going away, right? I want to invest more in a streaming video game service, something like Stadia or, you know, something like, you know, Steam. I want to invest in an online retailer sort of thing so people can buy digital copies of games, right? But I need money to do that. And one way they would do that is they would issue stock, right? But if nobody wants to invest in their company because all these fucking like, you know, hedge fund people and investment bankers and shit like that are like betting that their company is going to go out of business, then that just makes it harder for them to recover, right? And then what happens? The company has to declare bankruptcy, and then you get people like Bain Capital. You know, you remember Mitt Romney's company, Bain Capital? You know, you get these sort of private equity firms is what they call those, right? And they're like vultures that go around and they'll buy up a company and they'll fucking basically liquidate it, lay all the people off, right, and make a shitload of money doing it. And it's like, you know, that's what happened to Toys R Us. You know, fucking Bain Capital took over. That's what happened to Kmart, right? So like a lot of like this is predatory capitalism is what this is. You know, the whole short selling thing is just like one piece in the larger sort of list of predatory capitalistic you know, I guess methods, which in my opinion should be outlawed. You shouldn't be allowed to make money from a company going out of business like that. That's kind of bullshit, you know. It prevents them from ever really recovering, right? Or it doesn't prevent them, but it definitely fucking like stands in the way, right? So what happened with GameStocks, right? GameStop. Well, there was a lot going on with like apparently there was a guy that you know, who's sort of the current CEO had a hand in this. So you could like some people are saying like, yeah, well, maybe this was all just a scheme for this guy to make money, right? Yeah, maybe, but you know, for one reason or another, some people on Reddit decided this company was undervalued. They thought GameStop could recover, you know, and they saw that there were short selling positions that equaled 130% of the actual stock that was issued, and they realized that, you know, we could make a shitload of money if we all invest in it, because this is what happens, right? This is what happens. So going back to our thing here, right? Here's our illustration. So let's say that, you know, company A borrows the money, borrows the stock, wants to do a short sell, right? But instead of the stock going down, it actually goes up, right? Let's say it goes up to $100 a share, right? So they were betting on it going down to $25 a share. They borrowed it at 50, and they borrowed and sold it at 50, right? but they are obligated to give these stocks back to who they borrowed it from, because they don't own it, they just borrowed it. So if it goes up to 100, that means they have to buy it at 100, so they actually lose money, right? They have to buy it at 100 and give it back to who they borrowed it from. So this is why if the stock goes up, when you do a short sell, you lose money, right? So you're basically betting that it's gonna go down. So if it goes up, you lose tons of cash. And there's a certain period of time that you have in order to sell it, right? So you don't have to sell it immediately. You have, like, according to the short sell, it lasts for a certain period of time. And at the end of that period of time, you have to buy it, no matter how much it costs. So what happens is that they're waiting. The hedge funds, things like that. There's one called I can't remember what it was called. I have it written down here. Melvin Capital Management. That's one of the hedge funds, right? What's going on is that they have to hold their positions, right? They have these short sells. They can't actually buy it back, because if they buy it back, they're going to lose a shitload of money, because they were betting on it. They bought and sold it, or they borrowed it and sold it at $5 a share. They were betting on it going to $3 a share, right? But now it's at $300 a share. So if they actually have to buy it back, they're going to lose that much on every share. So they're going to lose millions and billions of dollars if they have to buy it back at $300 a share. In the meantime, while they're waiting, holding on to it, they have to pay interest on the loan because they borrowed it. So they're already losing money anyway, even if they hang on to it. So it's like they're kind of in a no-win situation. The only way that it works out for them is that if the stock goes all the way back down to $3 a share, which is probably not going to happen, right? So that's why these hedge funds are fucking like going belly up, and they have to, like, they're getting bailed out. I think Melvin, I don't know if it was Melvin Capital Management, but one of them like had a $2 billion bailout from other private investors. And that kind of says to you, it's like, well, why would you, like a company like that, an investment company, a hedge fund or whatever, they shouldn't be allowed to leverage that much. You know what I mean? Like, they shouldn't be allowed to, like, because this is the kind of shit that crashed the economy in 2008. This sort of market manipulation. It wasn't exactly short selling of stocks. It had more to do with, the housing market. But it's the same kind of market manipulation is what happened in 2008. Basically a company leveraging out more money than they have to cover, like, so you should make it like your normal bank, right? If you just have like a bank that you put your money in, they can do investments like this also, right? But it used to be the law was, well, you had to have the actual money so that if such a deal went south, you had to have the cash on hand in order to actually pay for it, and so that your bank doesn't go out of business. And then all of the people who have their money in savings there don't lose all their money. Like, that's kind of what happened in the, long story, the very short version, that's sort of what happened back in the 1930s. A lot of banks went insolvent because they overextended themselves, right? And for years and years and years, it was the Dodd-Frank said that banks have to actually have, they weren't allowed to do this. Now what it is that now it's been loosened, because they took that regulation away, and that's what kind of led to the sub mortgage crisis, right? The mortgage crisis in 2008, right? Kind of what led to that, and they put back a little bit of regulation, but still they're allowed to leverage something like 5 times the amount of like assets they have or some shit like that. So it's still very much a problem, It's still very much a problem, and that's kind of why, like, I don't have any sympathy for these fucking hedge funds, because they're gambling. They're fucking gambling, and if they would have, and they're playing with people's money. People are investing with these guys. And people, your 401k is probably tied to a hedge fund if you have one, right? Stuff like that. They're supposed to, their job is to make money for people for things like retirement funds and shit like that. And what they're really doing is gambling with everybody's money, using these these sorts of fucking like these sorts of like shady financial products, right? Like this, in order to like profit from like, you know, whether the stock market goes up or it goes down, they still profit. And that's like, you know, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. They should have to make their money legitimately like everybody else, right? So that's why I don't have any like sympathy for these guys. That's why I don't give a shit if like, you know, Melvin Financial goes out of business, right? I mean, my shit's protected, right? I don't care. If a couple of billionaires lose a couple $1 billion, fuck them. Who cares? They shouldn't, you know, they took the risk. They knew what the risk was, right? And, you know, they shouldn't have overextended their fucking investments like that, you know. And that's the thing with the stock market. It's like gambling. You should only invest money that you're willing to lose, you know. You shouldn't put your life fucking savings into the stock market, because shit like this can happen, because it's basically a fucking casino. Maybe there should be some regulations to prevent the stock market from being so volatile, prevent this kind of thing from happening and wiping everybody out. Maybe we should have that. Gee. Right. And here's the really shitty thing. So what I said in my video that I made a couple days ago on the 28th, right when I made that video, what happened was that the Robinhood app basically stopped trading of GameStop, you know. And I said in that, you know, in my video, they were going to do it again the next day, and they did. You know, they opened it back up, but then you can only buy like 1 or 2 shares each, which is bullshit, you know. But the thing is, all of the investment bankers and the fucking, you know, right, and the hedge funds and all those guys, they could buy as much as they fucking want, you know. They could buy all the fucking shares they wanted to, because they need to buy shares now, right? Because they have to cover their short sells. Whereas normal, ordinary people, you know, they call us retail investors if you're just a normal person, we weren't allowed to buy any at all, which was bullshit. So this is what it's turned into, because the people on Reddit, the more you buy, now that they've kind of figured out the system, right? The more you buy, that pushes the stock price up, right? And then the higher the stock price goes, the more money that the hedge fund people lose, right? So this is why people if you go on Wall Street Bets on Reddit, you know, a lot of these guys, everybody's saying, hold, 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 don't sell, hold, even though a shitload of people are selling already, but, you know, right? But still, that's a lot of people are saying, hold on to it, and it's become a battle now against the hedge fund guys, and it's like, good, I hope they fucking win, you know, because it's like, the thing is, in other countries and shit, you can still buy it, right? So there's a lot of people in Europe now, a lot of Redditors from Europe who are buying GameStop, you know, because in America, like fucking, you know, the apps of like, and it wasn't just Robinhood, it was a couple of other investment apps, right? But I mean, if you go to like Fidelity, that's what I use. Fidelity is still allowing trades of GameStop. So I suggest anybody out there, if you have the ability and you want to get in on this, and you still think it's a good choice, you know, please keep in mind, I'm not telling anybody to do it. I am not an investment professional. This is not investment advice. But if you want to do it, if you want to take that risk, you can go to fidelity.com and open an account. I think there's a waiting period, but it's only for, I think, a couple of days or whatever. And this is far from over. It's, you know, we'll see where it's at on Monday, right? Now, do I think it's going to go up to $900 a share? Like, probably not. It's probably not going to go up that high. It's probably going to go up, though, a little bit more. You know, I bought a couple of myself, but I'm not a super rich person, so I only bought, like, a few shares. You know? Like, but, you know, it's like, fuck it. If I make a couple $100, I'll be happy. You know? And it's not really about the money at this point. It's more about, like, you know, sticking it to the fucking... You know, sticking it to the Wall Street guys, right? You know, if you remember, 2008, whatever, after all of that shit went down, the subprime mortgage fucking crisis, and, you know, millions of people across the country lost their homes, right? And then lost their jobs in the subsequent fucking economic downturn. Nobody got held accountable for that shit. I don't know if you remember, right? basically nobody, for like really dodgy, bribery, all shit like that, nobody went to fucking prison for any of that shit. They got away with it. They got away with it, and they ruined a lot of people's lives in the meantime, right? And like I said in my last video, we can't depend on the government to do anything about it, because they're not going to do anything about it. The government is not going to. They're incapable of this because, and it's not just the Republicans' fault. It's the corporate, it's also Democrats as well. Like corporate Democrats is what they, they're people like Nancy Pelosi, right? She's a fucking corporate Democrat, Money and power is very much entrenched into our system, right? So this is why we're just getting, very, very lax regulation when it comes to shit like this. So if the government's not going to do anything, then this is one way that the people can actually fight back. So good, and who knew that investing as a way of fucking protest would be a thing? Right? I mean, damn. I mean, well, this is fucking that's, it's sort of like democratizing the stock market. I guess that was one term that I heard. I didn't make that up, but it's actually kind of true, and it's people who they're investing money into this company, right? That means the company gets money. That means that they can expand or whatever. They can pay their people, blah blah blah. It saves them from going out of business, and then it's also, putting a thumb in the eye of the people who have been exploiting the system for years and years and years, right? And see, here's the thing. I got nothing against rich people, right? I really have nothing at all. I think we, any society should have rich people. There's always going to be winners and there's always going to be losers. You'll get some people on the left who are like against the very concept of billionaires. I'm not against that at all. I see no reason why someone who is successful in life should not also have the fruits of that, But I understand that a lot of those, a lot of that doesn't really have to do with how intelligent you are, how smart you are, right? What kind of work you do. A lot of it is pure luck. Pure luck that shit worked out the way it did, right? And also people who were just born with that kind of money, Donald Trump Jr., for example. That motherfucker never had to earn anything. Ivanka Trump. There's a perfect fucking example of somebody who was just born into vast amounts of wealth. Ivanka Trump has more money than you or I will ever have ever in our entire lives. Even if today I made a successful company, right, and my company made, several $1 million a year in profit, whatever, it would take me 100 fucking years to catch up, right? At even like, something that you would consider to be a great success, right? Those days are kind of over. It's very rare nowadays, like you see, like in the United States, we get, these sort of fairy tales, right, about rich people like Henry Ford, or the Rockefellers or whatever. And it's like, oh, this is the rags to riches story of this guy. You see that a lot in movies, shit like that. This is a guy that grew up and he had nothing, and he lived in a fucking wooden shoebox and had to eat leather and thumbtacks for Thanksgiving, and you know what I mean? And he just worked really hard and throughout his entire life doing this and that, and finally, like, one day started the blah 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 corporation, and and now he's like a super duper bajillionaire, and he spends his time going around and personally like manufacturing wooden legs for small children, like, the billionaire philanthropist with a heart of gold is an American myth, and we can all name people like that even today. You have these software moguls, people like fucking Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or some shit, or Elon Musk or whatever. They're the new industrialists. Henry Ford. Like, it used to be Rockefeller and Henry Ford and what was the steel guy? I can't remember. What was it? Rockefeller Steel? I don't know. And now it's like, now the industrial, the mythologized industrialists are now software moguls, like Bill Gates, right? And fucking, Elon Musk and shit. And they tell you when you're a kid that if you just work really hard and have a vision, you too can be a super bajillionaire and you can make a company that will go off and change the fucking world and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, in real life, that's bullshit. Right? Real life, that's complete total bullshit. Chances are you're not going to, it's a one in a million thing. And it has really nothing to do with how smart those people are. Jeff Bezos is not smarter than... He's not a super genius, He's probably a very competent businessman, Same thing. I mean, he's not stupid, obviously, right? But, he's not like fucking the most intelligent man on earth or whatever. He's not the hardest working man on earth, something like that. A lot of it just has to do with that's just how shit worked out. He just happened to be in the perfect position. He had a company that did online retailing at a time when normal retail was going away anyway, and the internet was taking off as a thing, and he was one of the first guys to capitalize on that. You know what I mean? And now his company, Amazon started as a bookstore. That's all they sold was books. For years and years and years. If you look back at it wasn't until like maybe 10 years ago where they really started to take off, 15 years ago. 2005, something like that. But for fucking 15 years and shit, they were just like a bookstore. That's, and then they just became the best bookstore. And then they started selling everything, and now you can get fucking anything in the world from Amazon, right? And that's just kind of how the fucking cookie, crumbles, man. That's just how the dice rolls. If it wasn't Amazon, it would be somebody else, right? That's the thing. That's what people don't get, right? If it wasn't this company, there would be another company that would be in the same position. They'd be called something else. They'd be named after some other rainforest, right? So, it's this fantasy that they teach, that they try to get you to and I can see why they do it for children, because they want you to aim big when you're a kid. This idea, this sort of myth that in America the streets are paved with gold. That's what it is. It's another variant on that sort of land of opportunity myth, right? And it is very much a myth, It is very, very much a myth because, yeah, there is opportunity in the United States, right? But it's a one in a million chance that you'll be successful, right? And a lot of it just has to do with just straight up fucking circumstance, where you are, right? How much money you have, how much money you were born with. Right. And just the circumstances of your particular industry and what's going on at the time. And if you just happen to capitalize on trends that are occurring, then you'll make a shitload of money. And it's not every company you make is going to succeed. For every business that gets started, something like fucking 90% of them close within the first 5 years or some shit like that, right? And that's just how it is. And it's these guys are not, they're not deserving of being deified the way that we do. That's kind of what it is. They've become the new, the new fucking American tall tales. You know what I mean? People like Jeff Bezos and stuff. 100 years ago, they would tell tall tales of Paul Bunyan. You know what I mean? And Johnny Appleseed and shit. And now the new tall tales are being told about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is so rich, you could stack all of his money up and it would reach the sun. Stuff like that, right? Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk is creating rocket ships to take everybody to Mars and shit like that, and he's got he's developing artificial intelligence and rockets, and we're going to be living on Mars in a Star Trek bullshit. Yeah, none of that shit's happening. It's like these people are being mythologized, It's and 100 years from now, instead of kids running around pretending that they're Davy Crockett, or some shit like that. They're going to be pretending that they're Elon Musk, you know, playing with their fucking little rocket ship cars and stuff. Anyway, kind of went off on a tangent there, but you know what I'm saying. Alright, folks, I have to take a pee break. So I'm going to go pee. I will be right back. Let me just put a little thing in the chat here. Pee break back in 2 minutes. I will be right back, folks. Thank you. Okay, we're back. So, all right. Sorry about that. Note to self: do not drink a 20-ounce thing of coffee right before a stream. But we're back. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. Let's see. I want to talk a little bit about, for the rest of this stream, because the stream is called "The Fight Against Fascism is Not Over," so I do want to talk a little bit about fascism. In particular, I want to talk about Marjorie Talyor Greene. Right. Because this, I think, is one way that we're starting to see, this is one wing of the fascist encroachment on our country, right? The extreme insane wing of, you know, QAnon, basically, is, I would say, a fascist movement, right, which is under the guise of being a movement about freedom, right, and preserve. So the language you get from QAnon is they always say, like, we're trying to protect freedom, we're trying to protect the Constitution, stuff like that. But then what everybody basically, you know, their actions say otherwise, right? Their actions are very much, you know, one step below monarchists, almost, right? So, you know, I want to talk about her specifically because there are a couple of others that have gotten into Congress. She's not the only QAnon believer who is actually in the House right now. There's another one named Lauren Boebert, and then, but during the election, there were something like 17 Republican candidates, right, who in one way or another had expressed support for the QAnon conspiracy theories, and luckily only about 3 of them actually got in. There's one other guy whose name escapes me at the moment who made some comments regarding QAnon also, in support of QAnon. So, but Marjorie Talyor Greene has been in the news a lot lately because she's kind of, you know, really insane. She's a senator from Georgia, right? Or not a senator, House rep from Georgia, right? Which is funny because Georgia went blue this time. You know, 2 senators who went Democratic and voted for Joe Biden. So how did this woman get elected? Well, her district, she ran unopposed, you know, because the Democratic challenger, for one reason or another, dropped out, you know. Which is kind of bullshit. Apparently, her Democratic challenger had some personal life problems, you know, having to do with his marriage or some shit. And he claims, I think, if I remember right, he claimed that he was getting death threats and stuff like that. And that's why he dropped out. But in real life, it looks more like he was cheating on his wife or something. And then in order to save his marriage, he, like, dropped out of the race. I don't really know. Right? So anyway, so she ran unopposed, and that's how she won. So lots of stuff have been coming out about here because she has repeatedly made comments on Facebook talking about how Democrats in the House should be executed for treason, right? In particular, Nancy Pelosi, talking about how Nancy Pelosi was a traitor and, you know, we execute people who are guilty of treason and shit like that. She liked a comment in 2019 that said, you know, to remove Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, a bullet to the head would be quicker than trying to recall her. So we're seeing lots of stuff like that on her Facebook page, you know, where she's not just comments that she makes herself, but comments that she liked, and they're all like threatening Democrats with violence, shit like that. Right? So that's kind of crazy. Now imagine, you know, and this is a point that I've heard on many places, you know, the Young Turks and elsewhere. Imagine you're working with this person. Imagine this is a person that you're at your job and somebody, you know, made a comment where they basically said they wanted you to be killed. And then you have to, like, work with this guy at your job the next day. I mean, you would not really want to work with that person, right? I imagine you'd get HR involved. And at the very least, you'd transfer to another department or not have to work directly with them or interact with them in any way. If not, they would just fire that person to begin with. Right? Pretty sure if I threatened one of my coworkers with death, I'd get fired, you know. But you can't just fire, you know, Marjorie Talyor Greene because she's an elected official. She has to actually break the fucking law first. Right? There is a thing where they can refuse to seat her, but that's too late. They can also expel her from the Congress, but there has to be an actual reason. So I don't know if just liking something on Facebook is good enough, even if it is a comment that says that Nancy Pelosi should be murdered. Still don't know if that's actually good enough to get her expelled. I mean, you would think it would be, but I don't know. Anyway, the last person they actually expelled from the Congress was Jim Traficant in 2006. And I vaguely remember this guy. I had to look him up. Basically, he got busted with, like, some bribery type scandals and shit like that. You know, taking bribes, that kind of thing. One thing I did notice, though, looking at the history of senators and House people who have been expelled, seems like it only really happens to Democrats. You know, just an interesting thing. It seems like I wasn't able to find any Republicans who have been expelled from the Congress. And I'm like, I wonder why. You know, kind of just shows that, you know, the rules only really apply when you're a Democrat. More on that later. Anyway, so a couple of other things have come out. She has a video where she claimed that the you know, Parkland shooting was staged, and it's a video of her harassing David Hogg. You know, Sandy Hook also, she claimed that those shootings were staged, right? And this was a conspiracy theory that was, you know, actually it's still active. It's not like it's gone, right? The idea that these school shootings were false flags, in order to, for the government to take away your guns, right? That was kind of a reaction from the conspiracy theory crowd, because that was, there seemed to be a rash of school shootings, right? 5-6 years ago, right? Which has slowed down in recent years, especially last year since all the schools went virtual. Who knew it would take a pandemic in order to stop school shootings? The thing about that, it's like, okay, so there was a problem. In fact, there is a problem with school shootings. People bringing guns to school to murder other students, right? And this kind of shows that, the conservatives, the Republicans, they don't really have any answers for these problems, Not only did they not do anything about it, but they reject the very notion that it's a problem to begin with, So this is what she said, right? She says basically, and it's not, what she says is the standard response from gun nut type people, gun owners, when it comes to school shootings, right? That it's a conspiracy, that this was a false flag thing, right? And the idea is that it's to rile up support for gun control, right? This was spread by Alex Jones, by the way. I don't know if he came up with this himself. I don't think he actually comes up with anything himself, really. But he definitely spread this conspiracy theory around. Right. And it is, of course, bullshit, Sandy Hook was actually real. Real people died there, right? The Parkland shooting was real, right? Children were murdered there, And it's a way of not taking responsibility. That's what a lot of conspiracy theories are as well, especially when it comes to things like school shootings, mass shootings, stuff like that. Claiming that it's all a false flag, that it's all fake. What that's really saying is that we don't want to take any responsibility for the results of our policy, right? And the rationale goes like this. Well, responsible gun owners will not allow this sort of thing to happen, right? Responsible gun owners will keep their guns locked up. Responsible gun owners will not flip out and shoot people for no reason, right? So that means it must be somebody doing this on purpose. There must be a plan behind it, because nobody in their right mind. So they will either say, okay, this person was crazy, or it's like, oh, it's really like a setup from like, George Soros and his friends, because they want to take away everybody's guns, because then if you disarm the populace, then you can go in and microchip everybody and blah, 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 right? Take over the country and force us all into a fucking, communist hellhole state or whatever bullshit they say, right? And that's what it is. It's ultimately just a refusal to take responsibility for, the results of your policies, which are clearly not working. So it's like when you're, it's kind of like she's in denial. She's in denial that, the fact that these people could get their hands on high-powered weapons resulted in this shooting. There must be some other nefarious purpose. It must be Satan or some shit that's causing this, or, devil worshippers or whatever, right? So anyway, a really crazy one that she talked about here is the Jewish space lasers. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this one I think deserves to be read because it's wacky as hell. Let me turn on my monitor here. Okay, so what's going on with this, right? Well, oh, wait a minute. Wrong one. Let's go to the blue. There we go. Let me just kind of move that up a little bit. This has to do with the campfire in California 2 years ago, which, if you remember, not just 2 years ago, but now pretty much every year there's like major wildfires along the coast, right? And this is what she had to say Now, this is now, remember, this person is in the government now. She's a House representative. She's going to be making laws. All right. This is her 2 years ago. As there are now over 70 people confirmed dead and over 1,000 missing, the fires in California are a horrific tragedy. I am praying for all involved. Oh, thank you very much for your prayers. I'm posting this in speculation because there are too many coincidences to ignore, and just putting it all out there from some research I've done stemming from my curiosity over PG&E stocks, which tanked all week and then rallied to Thursday night after California. Okay, first off, she didn't research this. Keep that in mind, okay? Conspiracy theorists don't research shit. All right. She got this from Facebook. Okay, she got it from YouTube videos, right? Watching a fucking video on YouTube, reading some shit on Facebook, going to Alex Jones and watching a show, that's not research, all right? That's consumption of a product, okay? So she didn't research any of this shit, because if she would have researched it, she'd find out it wasn't true. So anyway, I just want to keep that in mind, right? And notice this other phrase here, just putting it out there, right? They always say that. Conspiracy theorists always say that. I'm just putting this out there, right? Draw your own conclusions. Okay. The reason they say that is it's because it's leading you to draw the same conclusion they are, right? Because they wouldn't put it out there to begin with if they didn't want you to have the same conclusion that they have. So it's bullshit language that influences the way that you think about what she's saying. Right? That's what it is. It's a way of convincing you that she's sincere, when in real life it's horseshit. So anyway, just remember that stuff. Stocks all tanked Thursday after California official announced they would not let PG&E fail. Right. I find it very interesting that Roger Kimmel on the board of directors of PG&E is also the vice chairman of Rothschild Incorporated. Dun dun dun! International investment banking firm. Oh no. Oh no, those greedy Jews. They're burning down California. I also find it interesting the long history of financial contributions that PG&E has made to Jerry Brown over the years, and millions spent in lobbying. What a coincidence it must be that Governor Brown signed a bill in September of 2018 protecting PG&E and allowing PG&E to pass off its cost of fire responsibility to its customers in rate hikes and through bonds. Okay, so that bill she's talking about in 2018 had nothing to actually do with wildfires. The cost of wildfires, it had to do with shutting down the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, right? Which the nuclear power plant in Diablo Canyon was built on an earthquake fault, and if there was an earthquake, it would cause that power plant to go into meltdown, and that was a thing for decades. People have been trying to get that shut down, and so the bill was signed in order to allow PG&E to offset the cost of shutting down that power plant and preventing a nuclear fucking disaster by increasing the rate hikes. And you know how much rates went up because of that bill? 1.2%. Okay? 1.2% is how much the rates actually went up because of that. So, and that's one thing I want to say there, right? Because I wanted to point that out, because it's a method that conspiracy theorists use in order to fake credibility. She takes something that's true and then spins it around in such a way that makes it sound like it's nefarious. Yes, there was a bill that allowed PG&E to raise their rates in 2018. It had nothing to do with shielding them from wildfires, right? It's bullshit. Anyway, going on. It also must be just a coincidence that the fires are burning in the same projected areas that the $77 billion high-speed project rail is to be built, which also happens to be Governor Brown's pet project. What are the odds that Feinstein's husband... Alright, so first off, yeah, that is a coincidence, right? The fires burned in areas that are undeveloped, right? So you know, if you're going to build a high-speed rail, it's going to go through areas that are undeveloped, you know, because you don't build straight through the middle of downtown where you have to demolish buildings and shit like that, right? No, you go through areas, you know, along highways, stuff like that, right? So it doesn't make any sense. It's another just like bullshit point to make herself sound like she's fucking actually investigated something when she really fucking didn't. You know what that investigation was? Somebody took a map of the fires, right? And here's the thing, we don't even know if that's true, first off. It probably isn't. But somebody probably just looked at the map of the fires and then looked at a map of where the rail was supposed to go and saw that some of it overlapped, and that must mean that there's a fucking conspiracy about it. It's horseshit. You know, and that's another thing. Notice while I'm reading this, how much of this stuff, there's no actual proof for any of it, how much of it is just complete conjecture, you know. Like, for example, why would it matter if PG&E, like, you know, made contributions to Jerry Brown over the years, right? What would that have to do at all with fires burning down an area where a high-speed rail thing is being developed? But there's no connection between those two things at all whatsoever. But all you have to do is say them next to each other, and it makes it sound nefarious, right? So anyway, going through, all right. Geez, with that much money, we could build 3 U.S. southern border walls. No, you couldn't. That's bullshit. Okay, because we don't know how much building an entire wall across the southern border would be to begin with. You know, the Trump campaign said it would cost $12 billion. A report from the Democratic committee said it would cost $70 billion. So the wall was bullshit to begin with whatsoever. It's just, I don't know, such bullshit. Anyway, then oddly there are these people that have said they saw what looked like lasers or blue beams of light causing the fires. Okay, so just in case you're following along with me, this is where I'm at right now. Oh wait, oddly there are people who have said they saw what looked like lasers or blue beams of light causing the fires in pictures and videos. I don't know anything about that, but I do find it really curious that PG&E's partnership with Solarian on space solar generators starting in 2009. Okay, so this is another thing. This Solarian company was a conspiracy that went back to the Obama years, and apparently this was a company that took some federal money and then went out of business, and it became this big thing where, like, you know, all the conspiracy sites were saying, yeah, they took $500 billion and all this ridiculous amount, when in real life it was like, you know, it was maybe something like 500 million. Please keep in mind, $500 million for the federal government is a drop in the fucking bucket. When you have a, you know, when you have a fucking, like, yearly budget of like over $1 trillion, that's nothing. You know, 500 billion over like the course of a decade is like nothing, right? Keeping that in mind. But Solarian did not also create space generators, space solar generators. What the fuck even is a space solar generator? That doesn't make any sense, right? Anyway, they announced the launch into space in March of 2018. No, they didn't. And maybe even put them up before that. No, they didn't. Space solar generators collect the sun's energy and then beam it back to Earth in a transmitter to convert to electricity. They don't exist. There's no such fucking thing. Right? The idea is clean energy to replace coal and oil. They're beaming the sun's energy to Earth. I'm sure they wouldn't ever miss a transmitter receiving station, right? This technology does not exist. This is ridiculous Star Trek horseshit. You cannot beam fucking... This is shit that would take, you know, 50 years to develop. We don't already have those, if it's even possible. And you'd probably lose more energy beaming it back as a laser, you know, rather than just putting up a solar panel and collecting it that way. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway. I don't know. I hope not. You know, and here's another thing that I wanted to you know, say here, right? Right here. I don't know anything about that, but I do know. See, that's another rhetorical device that conspiracy theorists use. I don't know anything about that, but Well, if you don't know anything about it, then why the fuck are you talking about it? Number one. Number two, it's just another way of saying, I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions. I'm just putting it out there. Well, put it out there in your fucking ass, you dumb bitch. Anyway, moving on. All right. Good thing for Solaren that Michael Peavy is on their board since he is a former president of California Public Utilities Commission, California's most powerful energy regulatory agency. Great connections right there. See, do you notice here how much of the fucking, connections? Anyway, I will also say whoever was able to buy that PG&E stock at the bottom before that announcement was made and the stocks rallied sure did well on their investment. I wonder how you get privy to that kind of info. If you knew how to fucking do some research, you would. Right? But I also have to know somebody, right? Seems like there's a lot of connected people in this crowd, and with all these space solar generators, I really hope they have a good aim beaming the suns down to Earth, but what do I know? I just like to read a lot. No, you don't. No, you don't, you dumb bitch. You're not reading anything. You're watching fucking Alex Jones. Right. And I just wanted to point this out and kind of, this is the conspiracy theory mindset. Let me turn that shit off. Right. This is the conspiracy theory mindset that you get from these people. Right. She did that woman didn't research any of that shit. She didn't, was because she's made it sound like, oh, she researched it. Oh, she went and she made phone calls. She tracked all these people down. She went and looked at the board of directors of PG&E and saw who was on it. And, oh, it's the same guy that's on this fucking Solarian, company. And, like, here's a video of them launching, like, their space fucking generators into outer space and all that shit and blah, blah, blah. She didn't do any of that fucking work. She didn't do shit. She read it on Facebook, right? She watched it on YouTube. Okay. If it was any reading at all, it would be on some fucking, like, Reddit forum about, or something about conspiracy theories. She didn't read shit. She didn't investigate shit. Okay. She doesn't actually know shit, because if she actually did any of that work, she'd find out that was all bullshit from start to finish. And you notice how large of a block of text that shit was, that sort of gish gallop, That's another way that they make you think that what they're saying has merit or that it's true. They bombard you with so much information, right, that actually trying to fact check any of it, by the time you fact check any of it, they move on to something else. And it's like, it's horseshit. It's complete and total horseshit. And this person right now is making laws right now. This person has been put on the education committee in the House, right? She's going to be deciding what goes into legislation that has to do with schools, right? Schools where she believes that there are false flags by the government, that the government has created mindless zombies to go and shoot up schools in order to take away our guns. She's going to be making laws that have to do with that stuff, that has to do with security, with schools, shit like that. See, this is why when people say that fucking, elections matter, elections have consequences. Yes, they do. They do. When you fucking elect the wrong person, this is the consequence that you get. You get an insane person who's going to be making insane laws. And she will be blocking, when somebody actually comes up with a good regulation or a law or something that will help people prevent school shootings, for example. She's going to block that shit. Right? People are going to die because of the choices that this crazy woman is making. Right? And this is besides the fact that she's doing all kinds of ridiculous shit, that she, like, she's like one of these people, she's trying to bring, like, firearms and shit. Like, was it her or was it Lauren Boebert? One of those two are trying to bring a fucking firearm into the floor of the House or whatever. Right? That's besides the fact of all of that shit, right? This is just, like, her effect on what's going to get passed into law and how those laws affect people, in the coming years is going to be pretty fucking big. And it's going to be 6 years until we can get rid of her. Isn't that what, the term limits are in the House? Is it 6 years or 4 years? I think it's 6 years, right? So we're basically just going to have to put up with this shit until, like, fucking, God, 2026? 2020, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, so this is why it matters. This is why it matters, like, they first off, they never should have let this woman run unopposed, number one. Right? Like the minute her challenger dropped out, somebody else should have like stepped up to it. This is what we got to do. This is why these things matter. Why you should like you have to be politically active. You know, if just to keep the crazies from getting, you know, from fucking getting power like this. Okay. Oy, Jesus Christ. So anyway, ugh. Dynacat. For some reason, they think that they can be free by making others slaves. Yes, exactly, exactly. And it's really sort of, I think a lot of that has to do with privilege. You know, that sort of, you know, people talk about, you know, like white privilege, and there's white privilege. There's also like class privilege, and a lot of that intersects a lot. You know. I think people like her, Marjorie Talyor Greene, you know, they're very much afraid of what happens when they're not the privileged class anymore. You know, what happens when if we, you know, because people like her, they see things as a life as a zero-sum game. You know, every time you give rights or something to someone, that means it has to get taken away from somebody else. That means, you know, so we can't just have everybody treating each other with respect or whatever, right? Because that means you're taking away the right of somebody else to disrespect them. So it's like, well, you know, I have a right to discriminate against gay people, you know. So if you're taking away that right, you're taking away my rights, right? So you hear people, they know, at alt-right rallies and at conservative Trump rallies and shit like that saying, they're taking away my rights. And you go, what right are you fucking talking about? You know, what right has been taken away from you? Which right? The right to discriminate. The right to discriminate against people, to refuse to serve someone, for example, to refuse to bake a cake for someone who's gay, for example, right? They refuse to, you know, allow a black person to buy a plot of land in a cemetery. That was a story that just happened the other day, right? That's what they're talking about when they say this, because no one's really actually taking away anybody's rights over the last 20 years. There hasn't been any, you know, especially when it comes to fucking rich white people. What right got taken away? What, you know? The right for you to bring a submachine gun on a fucking airplane? You never had that right. You know what I mean? Like, shit like that. Is that what you're talking about? No. What they mean, you know, that's become cover, right? That sort of like, you know, my rights, you're taking away my rights. That's become cover for, I don't like the fact that I can't use the N-word and beat up gay people anymore. That's basically it. And, you know, so don't be fooled, you know, because you never had those rights. You never had a right to, like, you know, supposedly, I mean, you weren't supposed to fucking have those rights, right, in order to discriminate. You shouldn't have them to begin with, so fuck these people. Anyway, so let's see, where are we at? 145. Let's read some of the comments that we got here. Let's see, I see a couple of people. Timothy Dannenhofer. Talking too much. My fucking voice is dry and shit. Dude, the Democratic Party refusing to be progressive angers people enough for enough people to swing back to the Republicans every few years, and the Republican Party is getting crazier and crazier. Yes, that is exactly, you're exactly right. You know, it's because, and I think you're, you know, your assessment there is spot on. It's because the Democratic Party is too chicken shit to actually, you know, enact some of the things they say they stand for. You know, enact some of the policies, which a lot of the people vote Democrat because they want to see these leftist, you know, social policies. They want to see things like universal health care, right? A lot of people voted for Democrats in, you know, 2018 for that, right? And a lot of people voted for Obama because they wanted to see some kind of universal health care thing that went through, you know. So things that have to do with a social safety net, right? And it's stuff that's really needed. It's really needed because we're seeing the failures of capitalism. That's basically what we're seeing right now. Capitalism is great if you have money, right? And if your economy is more equitable, you know, right? If people have the money in order to spend on goods and services, capitalism's fantastic, right? But we don't have that in this country. We have, over the course of 30, 40 years, have continuously reduced the size of the pie that, normal people are able to attain, right? Through the usual ways, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, doing really good in school, right? Going to college, getting a loan, going to college, and then getting a job. That's what they tell you to do, right? When you're a kid growing up, they say you got to do really good in school and always work really hard. That way you can go to college, and then when you get out of college, you'll get a really good job. And it's like, to some extent, it's still true. You will make a certain percent more money on average. Or rather, let's say people who graduate college at different levels of degrees, right, tend to make more money than people who don't. If you have a high school degree, you'll make usually about this much money on average. And then if you have an associate's, you'll make that much more. And then if you have a master's, you'll make that much more, right? Bachelor's and a master's, whatever. But that has been decreasing for a very long time, right? Very long time. I would say it even started back in the fucking 90s, Already in the 1990s, it was prohibitively expensive to go to college. Which doesn't mean it was impossible, but loans were already too much back even then. I remember this shit because, that's when I, went to college, right? So even then, getting a job and trying to pay out, you would spend a good 10, 15 years paying off college loans, right? And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse, to the point now where it's like, it'll take you literally decades, 20, 30, 40 years to pay off your fucking college loans. Like, getting out of college and then owing something like, the price of a house. That is a really big economic, bottleneck for a lot of people, Imagine that. You get out of college, right? And already you have a $2,000 a month bill that you got to pay, or something like that, or whatever, however much it is. Or let's say even $1,500, $1,200, right? That's a big, stop right there. That's going to stop you from buying a car, buying a house, right? Anything like that. It's going to stop you from because you're already paying this much. So whatever job you fucking get, this is your bill that you got to pay off. And they made it like this on, in 2006, right? When there were economic indicators that there was going to be a crash, right? They passed a law, the Republicans passed a law, basically, preventing people from, when they go bankrupt, from restructuring their college loans. So when you declare bankruptcy, you're supposed to be able to take all of your debts and restructure them in such a way that they get paid off. And some of them get forgiven, some of them will be reduced down, shit like that. Right, usually a judge does this. You go into a bankruptcy court and the judge restructures it so that you eventually pay it all off, and some of it gets eliminated, shit like that, right? College loans are immune to that. So you can do that with all your other debts, credit card debt, shit like that. College loans, no, you got to pay those off, right? They passed that shit on purpose because they knew this was coming. They knew that there was going to be a, student loan crisis within the next decade. So they made it so that you couldn't declare bankruptcy and get out of it on purpose. Right? So that's kind of fucking bullshit. Where was I going with this? Oh, anyway. How did I get onto this tangent? Yeah. So people, getting back to the point, people vote for Democrats because they want them to do something about this kind of thing. Because Republicans, we already know what they bring to the shit they have on the shelf, which is nothing. Right? And we already saw the last 5 years, they didn't do anything about this. All of these different crises piling up. It's not just student loans. It's also, the environment piling up. It's also like fucking the economy, the coming automation crisis. That's something that's going to happen, in the next 20 years. A lot of the jobs that you get now, that people like entry-level jobs, are going to get automated. See, that already happened to a lot of highly skilled jobs, like, construction, things like that, back in the, and especially factory manufacturing. That already, they already went through a sort of an automation crisis in the, 60s and 70s, right? And now it's happening to unskilled labor, things like waitressing, being a waiter in a restaurant. That's something that's going to get automated away. Now you're just going to have like little menus at the table that you just type your shit up, and then fucking, so you don't even need somebody to come take the order. You just need the guy to expedite it. And then eventually they're going to have little droids that'll just bring those out, within 30 years. There will just be fucking robot waiters that just go on a track and bring everybody's food. Right? That shit's happening, right? Self-driving cars. That shit's happening too. So yeah, you can get a job driving an Uber, right? 20 years from now, you're not going to even be able to fucking do that. Your car will drive itself. So there'll just be taxi companies with self-driving cars where you get in. There won't even be a steering wheel, right? You'll sit down and it's like, well, fuck. So now you can't even get a job fucking driving people around, delivering food. That's going to be gone. So what's going to happen when all of this shit, you need some UBI. That's the answer to that. Well, the Republicans ain't going to fucking do that. They'll never pass a UBI. The only people that will do it is us, right? And the only way we're going to be able to get it done is by voting in Democrats who will actually do it. Well, if they don't fucking actually do it, if we vote in the Democrats and they don't do what we want them to fucking do, that you're right, Timothy, you're right. That pisses people off, right? So then they go back and they vote for Republicans, or they don't vote. They don't vote, and the Republicans win. Right. And it just turns into this fucking cycle. It's like, so that just shows you got to fight harder. The fight never ends, just because right now, yeah, we're looking pretty good right now. We've got both houses, right? We've got the presidency. That doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. It's just a temporary stopgap. It's very, very temporary, and it's very likely that in 2024, the Republicans are going to take either the House or the Senate, and then that's it. Forget it. You're not going to see any, you'll just get another 2 years of obstruction, and if that happens, it's very likely that, they could win the election, the next presidential election, most likely. Hopefully it won't be fucking Donald Trump again. Hopefully he'll be in prison, right, and won't be able to run, but who knows? It could be Marco fucking Rubio, it could be Ted Cruz, for crying out loud. One of those assholes there will be eventually another Republican president, and it's like, this is why we have to be active. We have to be active even in years where there's not, any elections, right? We should be active constantly, constantly fucking, out there protesting, right? Constantly supporting the candidates that you do like, with your money and your time. Not just money, it's not all about money, there's other things you can do. You can volunteer for them, you can, be an advocate online, you can make phone calls, shit like that kind of thing. You can contribute, in many ways, even during the periods where there's not even an active election going. So anyhow, let's see what other ones we got. Timothy, The Democratic Party insisting on being Republican Party light allows for fascist Republicans getting elected every few years as voters become frustrated with Democratic Party uselessness. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we were talking about. Denicat. GameStop doesn't make money when the stock goes up. The stockholders do. That naturally includes a lot of company executives, but not the company itself. Well, when the stock goes up, yes, but they make money when they issue stock. So, you know, when that stock goes up, the value of the stock, right, is supposed to be the value of the company, but that's not exactly true, you know. But that is one way that they can raise capital, though, is they'll issue stock at a certain price, and the thing is that, you know, the higher it is, the more people will want to own it and buy it or whatever, and it, as it goes down, that is sort of a measure of the health of the company. So, you know, yeah, the company doesn't make it when the stock goes up. The company does not make money. You're right. That is correct, but it is a measure of, you know, how well the company is, and more people will, like, if they issue more stock, more people will want to buy it if it's up. So that is kind of, but yeah, you know, I mean, the larger point, though, I would say is that, you know, the stock market is pretty much divorced from, you know, it's not a good economic indicator as a whole for the country. You know, for any particular company, yeah, you could say that it's a good indicator of that. It's an indicator of, okay, is GameStop healthy? You know, is it going to be able to, you know, stick around, and are they going out of business? You know, you could say it's a measure of that. But like overall, when, like, you know, when everybody says, oh, the stock market's at 50 billion or whatever, you know, that means that the economy's doing well. That's bullshit. You know, that really is not a good measure of what's really happening out there. Okay, let's see. Can you guys even see this little corner I'm drawing in? I just want to make sure you can see that. Let's see. And of course, if the CEO dumps the stock, the share price also takes a dump. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's also, first, like, you're right, because the more of it you sell, you know, the more available there is for it to buy, and then that means the stock goes down because it's more plentiful. Right? So that's kind of what the guys on Wall Street Bets are doing right now. They're driving the stock price up by buying, you know, because the more of it you buy, the less that there's available. It's called the float, is what that, you know, those are the stocks that are available to be traded, the float, you know. And what they're trying to do, the GameStop guys, is by, I mean, Wall Street Bets, what they're trying to do is drive the price up by reducing that, you know, to zero, right? And that will drive the price way the hell up, because it's called a squeeze, you know, like, so the people that have made short sells, right? They borrow the stock, they sell it, now they have to buy it back after a certain amount of time, right? And so what it is they want to buy up all the stock so that it causes the price to go up and it squeezes them, you know. So now they have to buy it at whatever price it is, you know. So because they're contractually obligated to buy it, because they you know, they have to give it back because they sold it on a loan. Right? And that's that hits a point it's called a squeeze, and that'll mean that the stock could go way the hell up. It could go up to, like, you know, because there's infinite demand for it now, you know. So it could go up to, you know, thousands of dollars a share. Now, will it actually go up to $1,000 a share? You know, because there are people on Reddit who are like, we're gonna hold and squeeze until it's $5,000 a share. Well, good luck with that shit. It's probably not gonna hit that much, but it could go up to, you know, $600, $700, $800. I mean, that's not inconceivable. So, and if they do that, yeah, all those hedge funds that have been putting in short sellers, they're gone. You know, imagine having to pay $900 for a stock that you bought at $5. You borrowed and sold at $5, because you were thinking it was going to go down to $3, and now you have to buy it back at $900. They're going to lose billions of dollars. So, fuck them. That's what I say. Good. I hope they go out of business because, it'll be a good lesson to the rest. Maybe they shouldn't be doing this shit in the first place. It's like this is a practice which puts companies out of business. People work at GameStop. I mean, it's not the best job ever, but, there are people that work there, and this is how they get paid, and that's how they make their money, and these people are all going to lose their fucking jobs because these assholes are betting against their company. And it's like, shouldn't be allowed to fucking do that, in my opinion. Anyway. Let's see. Dynacat, Georgia barely went blue, and it'll be a hell of a fight keeping it blue. Yeah. I think a lot of what happened in Georgia this last election cycle had really to do with Trump. A lot of everything had to do with Trump. And it was very much a repudiation against Donald Trump so much. Was anybody ever really excited about Joe Biden? No. Nobody gives a shit about Joe Biden. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm kind of happy with him now. Just going through those executive orders. The shit and that was just the shit he did on one day. That kind of shows me that, okay, he's not just like, he's not just like some fucking random moron that we got in there. You know what I mean? Like, and I even said this myself. I said, plenty of videos that I would vote for anybody that was opposing Trump. Like, I'd vote for a fucking broom handle with a mop on its head riding a fucking wooden sawhorse over Donald Trump, right? And I think what Biden is trying to say with all these executive orders, like, immediately, he's trying to say, like, hey, I'm not just the guy you voted against Trump for, right? I'm not just anybody but Trump. That's not me. I actually have a plan. I have a vision. He wants to do something. He wants his presidency to count. And I'm actually kind of happy with him, because the shit that he's done so far has actually been kind of progressive. I mean, so far it's only been a week. I don't know. I'm sure there'll be plenty of things that he'll do that'll piss me off over the next 4 years. So that's another thing, is that we need to not go easy on Joe Biden. That's another thing. All right, just because he's the president now, right? He's the president now, and he's not getting us into daily fucking scandals, right? He's not doing the kind of ridiculous shenanigans that Donald Trump was, right? He's actually seems to be competent and seems to actually care. That's great, right? But that doesn't mean he gets a free pass. He should be treated with the same sort of, skepticism of any elected official. Whereas you only trust them as far as what their actual actions are. What they actually do. What does he actually, try to do, and what does he get accomplished? What did he promise, right? We need to hold him accountable for all of that shit, and not let up the pressure. Now's the time. If we want things like, for example, Joe Biden said that he would veto a national health care plan, a national, universal healthcare plan. He said he'd veto that. Well, now's the time. Pressure his ass into, accepting that. Now, what they should do now is try to pass a universal healthcare bill, right? Make him fucking put his money where his mouth is. It's like, are you really going to veto this now? Now that we actually got this going, are you going to be the guy that's going to stand in the way of stopping this? That's what we should be doing right now. We should be putting the fucking thumb screws to Joe Biden and saying, okay, it's time for your ass to fucking deliver. Right? These are the things you promised. This is what you said you were going to do, so now it's time for you to fucking do them. And this is what we should be doing now. We shouldn't, because this is what happens every 4 years, is that, every time a Democrat becomes, gets elected, is that the left just goes to sleep. That's what happened in 2008, or, fucking the anti-war movement just went away. It's like, oh, Barack Obama's here, he'll fix it. Bam, everybody went to sleep. No more protests. No more fucking, anything. It was just like, okay, Obama, you're there, fix it. And then everybody gets pissed when he doesn't fix it. It's like, no, well, now we need to fucking, this is when we should be, doing it even more, Like I saw, like right after the inauguration, there was a BLM protest in Portland where they were holding signs saying "fuck Biden." Right? Good. That's what they should be doing. Good. They're sending a message. Hey, this guy is not going to fix everything for us. We're the ones that have to fix it. Right? We need, and that's exactly what they should be saying. Joe Biden, you're not the person that is like, you're not a magical fucking savior, sent by God to fucking like bail us all out. You're just a guy, so we're gonna fucking like treat you like any other fucking guy and tell you what we want. That's exactly what they should be doing. And so that made me happy to see that. It means like, yeah, maybe people finally got the message. Good. Put the pressure on harder. Anyway, man, this has been 2 hours. This stream was kind of broken up and rambling, and I kind of went off on like 17 different tangents, but fuck it. I don't know. I think it turned out okay. We're getting close to the end here. We only have this little section down here. We'll probably finish this in the next stream, so we'll have to think of some other thing to draw. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Dynacat and Timothy Dannenhofer and Sean Nillabud. Thank you for joining too. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog. You guys are great. I am going to go ahead and end this. So I'm going to do my end and spiel here. So if you guys want to tune out now, be my guest. But I got to do this at the end of every stream. Let's see. I got that. I got my SD shop. And then I will just show CD videos, and then also my webcomic here. Because, I do notice that when I do this, after the end of each stream, I notice a small jump in traffic to my other, like, social media things. So it's definitely worth it. It's kind of like every YouTube video says, please like and subscribe. And it's like, well, you get tired of hearing that, but it actually works. It actually works. When you tell people to please like and subscribe, that's what they do. So anyway, if you like what I do and you want to help me out some more, wrong monitor, you can, if you want to help me and you like the channel and you want to see more of my content, and especially if you like my artwork, you can support me financially by buying something on my Etsy shop. So this is my Etsy shop. I have prints of my artwork here. Each one of these is a handmade 11 by 17 print that I use coffee, things like that, in order to stain them. They all come out a little unique. This is a Lovecraft character, for example. This one over here is another Lovecraft character. Right, so each one of these comes out differently. The stain looks different, stuff like that. And if you like what I do, please consider buying something. I'll put a link in the description after the video publishes here. Here's another one. This is a half-size one here. This is my own creation. I made this guy up here. Well, the design at least. So anyway, please consider buying something if you want to support me financially. I also have, if you want to see more of my artwork, I have a DeviantArt website here. So I put lots of comics and stuff up on here, but also other stuff, different monsters and things. I usually draw lots of shit like this. So you notice the thing that we were doing in the stream. Here's lots of other similar pieces that I've been doing for a long time. Paintings and dragons and shit like that. So if you like things that if you like my artwork and you want to see more, please check me out on DeviantArt. And if you want to see me talk about stuff that is non-political, I have my other channel, my other YouTube channel. It's UCD Videos. I do video game reviews. I do toy unboxings. I do streams, gaming streams, that kind of thing. So if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and that kind of stuff, non-political stuff, please check me out on UCD Videos on YouTube. And this is my webcomic. It is hawanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. And it's about ninjas and kung fu and that kind of thing. And there's, lots of ass-kicking involved. So if you want to check me out, that's hawanja.com. Anyway, thank you guys all so much. Let me go ahead and close that. Thank you once again, everybody. Thanks, Sean Nillabud. Thank you, Donna Katz. Thank you, Timothy Dannenhofer, Lewis the Hedgehog. All you guys are great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and end this. I will see you next week, Saturday at 11 a.m. I will be here.